So, Tommy, it's lovely to be here with you today and chatting to you about your experiences with PCI. So, my name is Majella Ryan and I work as a lecturer part-time with PCI, and I'm also a psychotherapist and a supervisor, and I do some training on other courses. And I met Tommy a number of years ago now. It was my first module that I taught with PCI, and it was your first year on the Masters. And it was PCI's first year running the Masters, and it was the first module. And now, Tommy, I know you're working for a number of years. You were working already and trained and qualified as a psychotherapist. Yeah. And you had done a diploma back in 2005 in counselling and therapy, and then you had done the degree with PCI.
The upgrade.
The upgrade. So you had done the bachelor degree with PCI, and then you had done that in 2010. Was it 2010 you had?
Yeah, 2010. Yeah, I began the
degree. Yeah. And then you came onto the master's program in 2016, and that's where our paths crossed.
That's where our paths crossed, yeah.
And you're working in Galway in Antubernua.
Yeah, Antubernua Counselling Centre on Dominic Street in Galway.
Great. And you're working with adults and teenagers there?
Adults and teenagers, yeah. So I work there full time, 5 days a week, Tuesday to Saturday, and yeah, sometimes it's half the day with adults, half the day with teenagers. It depends. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So it's great. Keeps you busy.
Very busy.
Full time, and lovely to have full time, to be working full time in profession. Yeah.
Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah. So I suppose this is a conversation about you deciding to do the master's program, and I remember at that time, Tommy, that you started it, you just had a new baby, and he was only a few weeks old, so you were a brave man to take that on, and you had a very supportive wife, obviously, who was also happy for you to take that on. Yeah. So that was an interesting time in your life to start doing a master's on child and adolescent psychotherapy. So you had a baby at home, so you were watching all the developmental stages emerging through, I'm guessing, a different lens.
Yeah.
What was it that made you decide to do the master's? You were already an adult psychotherapist, so what made you do the master's program in child and adolescent therapy?
Well, I've always wanted to specialize for the past few years, and I was looking around, keeping my eye online, looking at various courses, and I thought, gosh, what area will I go down? I knew I wanted to do a master's, but I wasn't sure. I knew I wanted to specialize, but I just wasn't sure. And then one day while online, I saw PCI advertising the MSc, and I thought, this is definitely for me, because in my previous job, I worked as a youth cafe manager. So I worked like organizing events and different things for young people. And I thought, gosh, I would love to work with young people in counseling. But I had kind of dabbled in it a little bit. I tried to work with young people, as in teenagers, but I always felt like I didn't have the skills or the knowledge. So I thought, listen, I just feel like I would do them a disservice, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I just don't have the ability to do that. But I wanted to. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you were drawn to that field and that area and that kind of group. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. And do you still enjoy working with that age group?
Love working with that age group. They're a joy to work with. Definitely.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah.
Yeah. So you were saying when you started out, you didn't feel equipped to work with, even though you had your adult training in counselling and psychotherapy, you weren't feeling equipped to work with adolescents at that point. And do you feel that the master's program began to give you some skills then that translated and helped you to work in that field?
Of course, definitely. And I remember the first day entering the Masters, actually, you were the lecturer, the first lecture we ever had, Majella, and you lectured on play therapy, you know, and play is child's language and toys are their words. I never forget that. And it's like, yes, it's a whole, I was using talk therapy and trying to do that with some young people, but it just didn't work. I could see them yawning, and the sessions just, it didn't translate.
Yeah.
And since doing the masters, you know, learning about sand tray therapy, play therapy, art therapy, you know, child development, I feel like I have a greater understanding. And especially working with teenagers, you know, and adolescents, it can be a very misunderstood stage in a child's life, and just even having the knowledge of that, of what's taking place here for the parent even, because what the parent might see as being, gosh, my child is rebelling, it's behaving a certain way. Well, actually, this is a normal part of development, what's going on right now. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, and I think that's a really important point, isn't it? That we can't just approach children or adolescents as though they're mini adults, because the language is different. The developmental needs are totally different. So how we work with them is very different, really, to how we approach adult therapy. So it's really important, to be able to have an understanding of that difference.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Very much so.
And then when you had, as you went through the course, you would have been working and still practicing as a psychotherapist. Yeah. Did it inform your adult work? Did you find the training informed your adult practice?
I would say that my training at PCI, the Adolescent Masters, the Child and Adolescent, actually taught me to be a better therapist overall with adult and teenage clients, because I actually had a greater understanding of the adult that was sitting before me. And even, again, I think that's why child development is so important, because something happened to them at the age of 12. It was important for them to understand where they were in their development at that stage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
People get stuck at a certain developmental age.
I think that's so true. And often adults who come to us are coming with childhood traumas and difficult histories or challenging things that occurred to them in their childhood. And so absolutely, developmentally, they can often get stuck at a different stage, and that we would need to be able to meet them there in order to bring them forward, or support them in moving forward and moving past that stuckness.
No, I found it really, I felt like, I suppose the words I would use, I felt like I came alive as a therapist after
Right. Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah, I felt like I honestly came alive, because even being trauma informed, we did a lovely trauma module, and just to know this is what's taking place, and being able to name that with the client, that this is actually normal. The way you're feeling is normal because of what you've been through. I was able to, I suppose, have the language that I never had before, had the skills. I had the knowing. I just knew things that I didn't know before. And I felt much more confident as a therapist, having completed.
Yeah, great. And also there's something lovely about you talking about the aliveness, because I think one of the joys of this work is that it does bring us alive. And I think it's because play and creativity bring out our aliveness. And it doesn't mean that you have to be an artist or you have to have wonderful skills, but just actually accessing play and creativity does bring an aliveness to us, which is a wonderful gift. In this field. It's the plus side of this work.
It's fun.
It's fun, And that doesn't often get acknowledged, you know. And it can be so much fun.
I
Yeah.
heard a therapist talk recently, and he works with young people. He's like, you know, he also has a job where he gets to have fun and gets to play with teenagers as well and kids. He gets to play and be part of it too, which is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, it is. It's an absolute, it is the real joyous part of the work. Um, how, like, you know, we said already that you had a new baby when you started. You were working full time as a therapist, and you took on completing a master's. So how was it trying to navigate all of those things at once?
Well, I would say I was so apprehensive at the beginning because I thought, and my wife and I spoke a lot about it, and I thought, gosh, how will I be able to manage all of this? But I found that actually giving yourself, what I work differently than other people. Other people say I had to sit down for the whole day and do this.
Yeah.
I would find little spaces of time where I could have 2 hours in the evening and I'd say I'm going to focus on my work tonight. And then it could be 2 days later, I'd be able to work a little bit more. And I found that I'd chipped away at it. I actually found it very manageable. It didn't take, I often hear people say it took over my life, but I have to say, I work full time. I just become a dad, and it did not take over my life at all.
Okay, great. So you were able to keep plugging at it, and
Definitely.
you found your own rhythm. It sounds like you
Yeah,
found your own rhythm in it. Yeah, so you were able to manage it. That's great, and that's good to hear, because I'm sure lots of people thinking about it would be really worried about that part of it, and that's a very real consideration, I think. You know.
very real.
Yeah.
Very, but
Yeah.
very manageable.
Okay. Yeah.
Very workload isn't so heavy.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, you know, the workload isn't heavy for anybody thinking about taking it on. The work is very manageable.
Great. Yeah, that's lovely to hear. What sort of skills do you put into your practice now that you got from the master's program? Like, are there certain skills that you, and I know we're forever evolving as therapists. I'm at this 25 years and I'm still learning every day. Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah.
But for you, was there particular skills that you took from it that you're still finding beneficial to this day?
Oh my God. I was saying this to my wife earlier, that actually sitting down thinking about the benefits of the skills, I realized I had taken away so much from this course. Like sand tray therapy, I use that with both teens and adults alike, and I find it very, very powerful. Art therapy is something that I would bring in, and just again, like I said, you know, understanding child development, understanding trauma, neuroscience. I think there's so much that I took away that actually I feel like it's all I use now. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I think it's all I use, you know?
Yeah. And I think there is something about being able, I mean, and the science is telling us and showing us that now, that the use of creative mediums really can help us access particularly unconscious material or traumatic material that has been buried. We can process it through creative mediums much more easily than just talk therapy. And I think that's true for not just for children, but for children and adolescents and adults.
Definitely.
It shows their world more easily through the use of symbols.
Very much so. And I would have said this, that, you know, I had worked with a client for 15 sessions and it was pure talk therapy. And then we decided to do a session of sand tray, and it was just so powerful. What came up for this client was quite powerful. It was able to access something that talk therapy was not able to access. And through that, so much healing occurred in that person.
Yeah.
It's very, very powerful way of working. But again, we had a strong rapport built up.
Yeah, you had a relationship
Yeah,
to hold and contain the work.
definitely.
And
Yeah.
and then incorporating the use of creative, you were able to hold your client within that space.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Definitely.
yeah,
Very,
yeah,
very powerful.
yeah. So just thinking about now, we're in very strange and unusual times, Tommy,
Yeah.
and we find ourselves, well, we're sort of starting to come out, emerge from the pandemic now,
Thankfully.
thankfully, and for most of us in this field, it has brought lots of new learning. We've had to navigate whole new ways of working,
Yeah.
and some of it Zoom and remote working, online working has become very familiar to us.
Yeah.
And for you in your practice, if you have to adapt your practice, how did the pandemic, I suppose, impact your practice as a psychotherapist, as a counselor and therapist? How did it?
Yeah, I suppose, it was a whole new way of working because you're working through Zoom, video, through the telephone. And there were clients that said they didn't like to do that and they would rather wait. So, I lost a lot of clients through that.
Yeah.
But then I actually gained a lot of clients from the past who I hadn't seen maybe in years that felt like they needed to talk to somebody right now. We're very happy with video, with telephone work. And I found it very helpful. Telephone can be hard in the sense that, you don't get to see the person, you don't get to pick up on facial expression, body language. It can be hard in that sense, but sometimes really didn't want to do video. But again, it was still giving them that space, even on the phone. And for some people, they found it actually easier in the comfort of their own home, having a cup of tea, talking to somebody and having the space to do that. So I found it very helpful. I do say that I missed the face-to-face myself, and I'm looking forward to getting back to that. But I think it's opened up the door that I'll be offering this, in the future, definitely. Yeah, it's an option, definitely.
Yeah, it's been an interesting time, I think, in terms of that. And certainly my own experience and that of my supervisees is similar to your own, Tommy, that some clients took up on working remotely. Some did not want to go near it, and that's absolutely fine. And the phone, even the phone, just being able to maintain a connection with some clients has been an important feature, even if they haven't wanted to use video link, to be able to maintain some connection, particularly with younger clients, I think is very important. That we didn't just disappear on them, because it did stop. Our work stopped, our face-to-face work stopped very abruptly. As did everything.
So people lost so much already, losing us.
And for some children and adolescents who maybe have had some history of loss within their family context, could feel that all the more acutely, and could be activated by that more easily.
Of course. It's so important, I think. I think it was so important just to have, I suppose, that medium available to them.
So really important. So as we come out of the pandemic now, I know I've been really reflecting on the impact of it on myself and on my colleagues, but on our clients as well. And I mean, the interesting thing, I suppose, about this time is that it's not just something our clients are going through. We're also going through it. And feeling the impact of it. So it's not as simple and straightforward as maybe other things have been. This is a very new and challenging experience for all of us.
Definitely.
Yeah, and as we move out, we are now thinking about, moving back into face-to-face contact with our clients, and looking at how we navigate all of that, and thinking about, for some, that transition will be easy as we move out into the world, and
Yeah.
for others it might be filled with a lot of anxiety and fear moving back into the world. And I think I was talking to you about watching some children playing, and their first time playing together as they negotiated the 2 meter difference, at the age of 7, and they're being really conscious of it. This wasn't a therapy session, this was just children I know, and I watched, I was noticing them playing, and they were playing hide and seek, which even in itself, is one of the very early, can you see me, can you find me, games. So it seemed very apt game for emerging from the pandemic.
Yeah.
But what do you think you might need now as a therapist, working with children and adolescents and adults? Like, what are the sorts of things you're anticipating seeing and dealing with, and what are you thinking about yourself?
Of course. Well, this pandemic, people felt out of control. It was the unfamiliar, it's the not knowing, which in itself creates so much anxiety within people. And plus, walking down the street, people are avoiding each other, afraid of getting too close. People are worried about losing a loved one. And even the adolescents I worked with, it's such an important time. Well, every time in development is important, but for teenagers to be cut off from their peers during this time, that isolation, the fear, some are at home with their parents who are trying to work and who are also struggling with their own anxiety. So for me, I'm just thinking about how important this space that we offer them, that safe space to be able to process all that has happened, all that has taken place.
Yeah.
And even in that space, that they have some control over it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So important. While we will understand to some degree what they're going through, we're not in their worlds either,
No. And we'll have to think about things like, do you wear a mask? Do you not wear a mask? Can you navigate can you manage the 2 meters apart? And even giving them some control of, do they want to wear a mask? Would they like you to wear a mask? And empowering them to,
there's so much to think about in this, but definitely. And I look forward to being able to meet the adolescents again face to face, because I know how important that is to them, and having that space to come to share, to talk about things is going to be huge. You know?
Yeah. And for some of them, the notion of us wearing a mask is difficult because they lose a lot of the visual cues, as do we, but particularly for a client who maybe has had some trauma in their history, that's going to be a tough one, isn't it?
Definitely. And it can be anxiety inducing as well, hand sanitization and masks and stuff. It can create a lot of fear within somebody else. It is something to think about.
Yeah. So if you were to think about, because I know you were reflecting on this and reflecting on your time in PCI and doing the masters and that whole process, and if you had advice for somebody who's now thinking about embarking and wondering, would they embark on this trip, what would you say to them?
Well, I would say, I don't think you'll regret it. I would say that it's changed, like I said earlier on, it's changed who I am as a therapist. If you like working with children, if you like working with adolescents, it will give you the skills and knowledge you need to be able to do that. I think it's very important to do some research around what you're looking for. But if it's working with children and adolescents, I don't think you'll regret choosing PCI. I really, really don't. I really enjoyed my time there, and as Majella, you were one of our lecturers, I really enjoyed, working with Majella. She put us all at ease. And, people often have fear around the academic side of it. But like I said earlier on, and I'll say this, just a personal piece about me, I left school very, very young. So there was a lot of anxiety in me thinking, will I have the academic capability to do this?
Yeah.
But what I would say is if you've done the degree, you will definitely be able to do the master's.
Right. Yeah.
Definitely be able, and it's very, very doable. Time-wise, academically, it's very, very doable. I have no regrets about the course, and it's brought me down this path to where now I get to work with adults, get to work with children, I get to give talks in schools also and do different things that I never would have had the opportunity to do if I hadn't done the PCI Masters,
Yeah, great. So that sounds like a great endorsement, Tommy.
Definitely.
Yeah. And it's lovely to reconnect with you again.
Likewise.
And to take the trip down memory lane and to hear what it's like to be at the other side of the experience. Yeah, it's great. So thanks very much, Tommy. And people can get in touch with PCI College directly if they are interested in knowing more about the program.